Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? It wasn't an accident. She could tell. It was a habit, the kind of silence people wore when they'd already decided you weren't worth listening to. Her uniform matched theirs. Her insignia carried the same weight. And yet somehow, when she spoke, she felt her words slid across the surface of the room like rain against glass, never soaking in. She sat straighter, the hard plastic chair pressing into her back, said nothing, not yet. The projector hummed at the front of the room, its beam cutting through the faint dust hanging in the air. On the wall, maps flickered in muted blues and reds. Circles marked possible contact points. Arrows cut across highways and deserts like wounds stitched on paper. The commander spoke in a flat rhythm. Convoy Alpha departs at 500. Contact expected near Sector Ridge. Estimated resistance, light to moderate. Air support will be on standby, but we don't expect escalation. His words felt too neat, too rehearsed. She watched the officers at the table nod, scribbling notes, the scratch of pens blending with the drone of the projector. And still she said nothing, because she knew something none of them did. Not from classified intel, not from intercepted chatter. She knew because she had lived this land. She had walked its silence as a girl, smelled the dust, heard the desert winds carry things that others ignored. Her father used to tell her the desert had memory. It holds the voices of every man who thought he could outlast it, he'd said once, when she was barely tall enough to see over the kitchen counter. He had been in uniform then, boots by the door, a rifle propped in the corner. And it always outlives them. He never came home from his last mission. She was 10 years old when the knock came, when her mother folded like paper into the couch, when the official words meant nothing because her father's voice was gone forever. The desert had outlasted him, too. And now, here she was, at the same table where men with louder voices still believed they could predict it. Her hand tightened around the edge of her notebook. Someone coughed. A joke cracked about rations, too forced. The commander's laser pointer danced over roots like a magician's trick, promising safety, precision. But she could see it, the flaw, the trap. The silence grew heavier as the commander's words slowed. Questions. Chairs shifted, boots scuffed the floor. One by one, officers asked, voices eager, sharp, fuel logistics, comm frequencies, evac points. And then nothing. That long pause where the unspoken lived. She raised her eyes. The commander scanned the room, almost skipped her, almost let the silence close over again. But something in her gaze, steady, unblinking, pulled him. Lieutenant. Every head turned, reluctantly. She spoke, low, measured, each word deliberate. Your roots are wrong. The ripple was instant, a laugh quick and nervous, a mutter, here we go. She ignored them. They won't be waiting in the sector you marked. They'll take the ridge line, higher ground, better sightlines. They've used it before, twice. Her finger traced a curve across the map, the detail sharp in her memory. You push the convoy through here, they'll have you boxed. First 10 vehicles won't even clear the bend before the fire starts. The commander's lips tightened. He didn't argue, but his silence wasn't agreement, it was calculation. The others looked at her with that same blend of dismissal and suspicion. She had felt it before, 100 times. At the academy, when her solutions worked but never earned the credit. In the hangar bays, where her modifications kept machines alive longer than regulations predicted, yet were waved off as luck. Always doubted, always overlooked. And she had learned silence was her shield. Let the outcome speak when the voices wouldn't. Noted, the commander said finally. His tone clipped, the map shifted, the meeting ended. But one pair of eyes lingered on her. The young soldier at the far end of the table, green eyes, hair cropped too short as if he hadn't yet grown into the uniform. He studied her not with doubt but with something else. Curiosity, maybe even recognition. But he said nothing. The barracks were colder that night. She lay awake on her bunk, the ceiling low, the air filled with the faint hum of the heating unit and the occasional echo of boots in the hall. Around her, the muted breaths of her squad rose and fell, some shallow, some heavy with dreams they'd never admit to. Her bunkmates shifted under the thin blanket. Rena, the medic, quick hands, softer eyes. She turned her head and whispered into the dark, "You okay?" The words were simple, but something in the way she asked made her pause. Finally she exhaled, "They think I'm ordinary." Rena's silhouette tilted, a faint smile visible in the dark. "Maybe that's your weapon." The words lingered, heavy and light at the same time. Because Rena didn't know. None of them knew. About her father. About the notebook hidden under her mattress, filled with sketches of terrain, intercepted fragments, old case studies she had memorized in silence. About the promise whispered into her pillow the night her world had fractured. "One day, I will finish what he started." Sleep didn't come, it rarely did. Instead, she heard the desert again. The wind, the silence between gusts, always carrying something more than emptiness. By dawn, engines growled to life. The convoy rolled, steel and dust, tires crushing gravel into haze, sun rising like fire on the horizon. She sat near the middle truck, window cracked, air slicing her cheek with its dry bite. The horizon stretched endless, blinding. No one spoke much. A cough, a laugh forced into silence, the smell of fuel heavy in her lungs. Her hand rested on her rifle, not with anxiety, with familiarity. The ridge appeared hours later, a scar cutting across the sky. That was when she saw it. Movement too faint for most eyes, a shimmer, a shift of shadow where no shadow should be. Her breath caught. The ridge. Exactly where she had said. Exactly where no one wanted to believe. The ambush had already begun. Gunfire erupted before the radio crackled, a snap, sharp as bone breaking. Then the scream of bullets carving dust into the air. The convoy jerked, drivers swerving, soldiers shouting, metal groaning as trucks lurched against brakes. She felt her chest tighten, her mind sharpening. They hadn't listened. And now silence was no longer her shield. It was her weapon. The first bullet tore the silence apart. It didn't sound like in the training videos, not crisp, not clean. It cracked through the desert like a jagged scream, ricocheting off stone, snapping past ears and steel. Then came the rest. A storm of lead, cutting the ridge into fire and dust. Her truck lurched sideways. Tires clawed the dirt, brakes howled. The soldier beside her slammed against the door, his rifle clattering to the floor. She didn't flinch. Her pulse surged, but her eyes stayed sharp, because she had known. She had felt it hours ago, and now here it was, unraveling exactly as she had said. "Contact, ridge line." Someone shouted into the radio, panic cracking their voice. No response. The airwaves drowned in static. She kicked the door open, boots hitting dirt. The sun was brutal, the air shimmering with heat and bullets. Her squad spilled out beside her, half-drained chaos clashing with instincts not yet sharpened by survival. Her ears caught everything, the sharp ping of rounds striking metal, the dull thud of earth giving way under impact, the strained breaths of men trying not to scream. And over it all the silence of command, the hesitation. She cursed it under her breath. She had warned them. The ridge spat fire. Shadows moved with precision, not bandits, not amateurs. These were trained, disciplined, the kind that didn't waste bullets. She dropped low, pressed her cheek against the dirt, the heat searing her skin. Through the scope she found them. Figures weaving between rocks, rifles steady, eyes hidden behind the glare of scopes catching sunlight. She exhaled slow, steady. One squeeze, a shadow fell. The soldier beside her gasped, "How?" She didn't answer, just shifted her scope, tracked another. The second shot broke bone and dust. The soldier swallowed hard, picked up his rifle, followed her lead. Around them chaos still reigned. Trucks jammed against one another, drivers shouting, doors flung open as soldiers scrambled for cover. One vehicle smoked, flames licking from its hood. The driver was still inside, pounding at the jammed latch. Her gut twisted, she sprinted. Bullets cracked past, some too close. She ducked low, slid against the burning door. The soldier inside, eyes wild, breath shallow, looked at her as if already dead. "Move back," she yelled. He shook his head, hand clawing at the door. She jammed her shoulder into it once, twice. It groaned, bent, then flung open. She grabbed his collar, hauled him free just as the flames roared higher. They hit the dirt together. The blast tore the truck apart seconds later. Shrapnel rained down, hot and sharp, singing the earth around them. His chest heaved. His lips moved. A thank you, maybe, or maybe just air. She didn't wait to find out. She shoved him toward cover and turned back to the ridge. The young soldier from the briefing, the one with green eyes, was pinned behind a tire 20 meters ahead. His rifle jammed, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the bolt. She moved toward him, low, fast. Dirt sprayed her back as rounds bit the ground. She slid in beside him, yanked the weapon from his hands, cleared it in seconds, shoved it back. His eyes widened. "How'd you?" Later, she snapped, "Focus." He nodded, too fast, too nervous. His breathing came uneven, chest heaving like a trapped animal. She saw herself in him years ago, her first firefight, heart pounding so hard it drowned out thought. She leaned close, voice cutting through the noise. "You're here, you're breathing. That's enough for now. Keep your eyes up." Something steadied in him, not much, but enough. Together they fired, covering arcs. One by one the shadows shifted, fell back. Not defeated, not yet, just probing, testing. Because this wasn't the main wave, she could feel it. The silence between gunfire told her, the pauses too deliberate. They were waiting. And she knew who they were waiting for. Her stomach clenched, not fear, recognition. Because this pattern, this tactic, wasn't new. She had read it before, in reports buried in her father's files, in after-action reviews stained with blood and regret. This was the same group, or what remained of them. The ones who had taken him. Her throat tightened, the old promise burning hot again. She wiped sweat from her brow, smearing dirt across her skin. The firefight dragged, minutes bleeding into each other. The convoy fought back, slowly carving order from chaos. Rena, the medic, dashed between cover, her kit clanging against her side as she dragged the wounded into shadows. She cursed under her breath each time, not at the enemy, but at the stupidity of men who thought war could be neatly mapped. At one point she dropped beside her, blood streaked across her sleeve. "You good?" Rena panted. "Fine." Rena glanced at her rifle, at the precision in her shots, then back at her. "Fine doesn't cover it." She said nothing, just reloaded. Because Rena didn't need to know, not yet. The commander finally barked orders into the comms. His voice cracked with static, frustration, denial. He had misjudged, and now they all knew it. But still he didn't call her name, didn't ask how she knew. That was fine. She wasn't here for him. Another wave came, heavier fire. Grenades thudding into dirt, smoke curling against the ridge. The air filled with grit, choking, stinging eyes and lungs. Through it she moved like shadow, each step measured, each shot purposeful. She wasn't chasing glory, she was anchoring, holding the line where it bent. The young soldier stayed close, learning her rhythm. His shots steadier now, his breathing less frantic. At one pause, crouched behind a wrecked truck, he looked at her, voice trembling but sincere. "Why didn't they listen to you?" She didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on the ridge, where shadows flickered, pulling back, regrouping. Finally, she said quietly, "Because silence makes people uncomfortable." He frowned, not understanding. She adjusted her scope, tracking movement. "And because they think ordinary can't be dangerous." The ridge fell quiet again, too quiet. Her skin prickled. This wasn't over, not close. She scanned, searching, and then there, a glint, a shape too still against the rock, a scope watching back. Her breath caught, her finger froze against the trigger. Because she knew that scope. Not the man behind it, she couldn't see his face yet, but the way it moved, slow, patient, the way it hunted, not fired. Her father's notes had described him once. A sniper with a name whispered, never written, a ghost. Her promise tightened its grip. The young soldier followed her gaze. What is it? She exhaled, the air hot, dry, heavy. Something I should have told you sooner, she said softly. But she didn't finish, not yet. Because the ridge roared alive again, and the silence broke into fire. The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting. The firefight had slowed, almost stilled, as if both sides inhaled the same breath. Dust drifted lazily through the air, illuminated by the cruel sun. Smoke curled from burning metal, carrying the bitter stench of fuel and blood. And in that pause she felt him. Not in a way she could explain, not in sight alone, but in the rhythm of the stillness. The way every other enemy eye seemed to glance toward one place on the ridge, unconsciously acknowledging authority. The sniper. Her pulse slowed, not from calm but from recognition. She had read about him, buried in after-action reports that had been scrubbed clean of names, in her father's journals smuggled into her childhood like contraband. The words had been vague, almost whispers, precision, patient ghost. And now here he was, watching her through glass and steel. The young soldier crouched beside her, sweat carving lines through the dust on his face. What is it? You see something. She didn't answer, not with words. She lowered her rifle, shifted just enough to peer through the scope again. The glint was still there, subtle, almost casual, a predator that didn't need to move much to remind prey it was being studied. She pressed her lips together, throat tightening. This was no ordinary target. Her father had written about him in one entry she'd read so many times the page was worn thin. If he's real, if he's out there, he doesn't fire to win. He fires to teach silence, to make others doubt themselves before they even lift their rifles. Her jaw clenched. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was the ghost she had been chasing. The radio crackled. The commander's voice clipped, strained. Alpha units hold position. Reinforcements en route. Do not advance. Repeat, hold. A lie, she knew it. Reinforcements weren't coming. They were hours away. He was stalling, patching holes in a plan already torn apart. Her squad huddled behind the smoking wreck, coughing, reloading, whispering prayers under their breath. Rena knelt by a wounded soldier, her hands red to the wrist, her voice steady but softer than usual. She told him about a bakery she wanted to open someday, about cinnamon bread and glass jars of honey, her words weaving a world far from the dirt and fire. The soldier tried to smile, his lips trembling. It was human, it was fragile, it was why she fought. She shifted, adjusted her scope again, and the glint vanished. Her stomach dropped. Down, she hissed, yanking the young soldier by the collar. A shot cracked, metal screamed. The tire above their heads shredded into rubber ribbons. Too close. The young soldier's eyes widened. His hands trembled, grip tightening on his rifle. He almost. Don't look for him, she cut in, voice sharp. He wants you to, that's how he wins, makes you look where he's already gone. She heard her father's voice in her memory. The deadliest shot isn't the one that finds you. It's the silence before it. That's when you break. Her chest burned, the weight of the old promise pressing heavier. She couldn't let this end like it had before. Another crack. Dirt exploded inches from Rena's boots. She flinched, then cursed, dragging her patient further back. Who the hell is up there? She didn't answer, couldn't, not yet. The commander barked over the radio again, his words empty, trying to fill the silence with authority. Hold fire until smoke clears. Do not engage without clear target. But she ignored him. because she knew this wasn't about smoke, it was about patience. She closed her eyes for a breath, blocking the chaos, letting the desert speak. The way the wind shifted, the angle of the sun, the faint shimmer of heat on stone. There, not where she had first looked, not where any normal marksman would wait, but higher, tucked into an outcropping so small most eyes would slide over it. She steadied her breath, exhaled. Through her scope she found him. A silhouette against the rock, motionless, almost serene. The rifle rested like an extension of his body, his face hidden by shadow and distance, but his posture, calm, unhurried, told her everything. Her throat tightened, because in that stillness she saw her father's absence. The ghost who had ended him. The young soldier followed her gaze, though he couldn't see the target. His voice trembled. "You're locked in with him, aren't you?" She didn't reply, not directly. Her finger hovered on the trigger, but something held it back. Not fear, something heavier. Because pulling the trigger wasn't just about killing him. It was about ending years of silence. Years of carrying a promise she had never spoken aloud. And she wasn't ready to let go, not yet. A round cracked from the ridge. This one didn't hit metal or dirt, it hit flesh. The soldier 2 trucks over collapsed, a scream tearing out of him. Rena shouted, scrambling toward him. Her chest clenched, she couldn't let it keep happening. But her breath faltered, because the sniper wasn't just shooting, he was choosing. He was teaching silence just like her father had written. Her hands trembled, a rare betrayal. She clenched her jaw, steadying. The young soldier watched her, confusion in his eyes. "Why aren't you firing?" Because if she missed, if she revealed herself too soon, it wouldn't just be a lost shot. It would be an invitation, a duel she might not win. And deep inside, where her heart still carried the memory of her father's folded flag, she wasn't sure if she wanted to survive it. The ridge stayed quiet again, waiting. Her breath grew heavier, her finger pressed tighter against the trigger. And then Rena's voice cut through the silence. "You can't freeze now." She blinked, startled. Rena was crouched beside the wounded man, blood soaking her uniform, eyes blazing through the smoke. "You're the only one keeping him back," Rena said fiercely. "If you don't move, none of us walk away." The words struck, not like an order, not like pressure, but like truth. Her chest lifted, slow, heavy. She brought her eye back to the scope. The ghost hadn't moved, still calm, still waiting. She steadied her breath, inhaled, exhaled. This wasn't about vengeance, not anymore. It was about the soldiers around her, the ones who still had voices worth hearing, the medic with dreams of cinnamon bread, the young soldier still learning how to breathe under fire, and the silence that would swallow them if she didn't act. Her finger squeezed. The shot cracked, echoed, and for the first time the ghost moved. Not down, not struck, but back, retreating, slipping into the stone as if swallowed by it. Her heart pounded. She'd missed, barely. But she had forced him to move. The young soldier exhaled sharply, awe in his voice. "You made him blink." She lowered her rifle, chest heaving. Sweat stung her eyes. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was something. The ridge grew quiet again, the kind of quiet that wasn't safety but a pause before the storm. And in that pause, she felt it deeper than ever, the weight of unfinished promises. Because the ghost was still out there. And she knew this wasn't the last time she would hear his silence. The desert fell quiet again. Not safe, never safe, but the kind of quiet that follows when both sides withdraw to lick their wounds. A silence thick with smoke, blood, and questions no one dared ask out loud. She lowered her rifle, shoulders aching. The ridge where the ghost had been was empty now, or maybe not empty, just unseen. He had melted into the stone, the way shadows do when the sun moves. Gone, but not gone. Her squad shifted cautiously behind the wrecks, their breaths uneven, their eyes darting to the ridge every few seconds as if expecting another storm. The commander's voice cracked through the radio again, brittle with authority he no longer truly held. "Maintain cover. Assess casualties. Reinforcements are." Static swallowed the lie. She ignored it. She looked instead at the people around her. The wounded soldier Rena worked on, his chest rising shallow beneath bloody hands. The driver she'd dragged from the flames, sitting dazed against a tire, eyes glazed as if still staring into fire. The young soldier beside her, his rifle clutched so tight his knuckles were bone white. These weren't statistics. They weren't pieces on a map. They were voices, fragile ones the desert could swallow in seconds if she hesitated again. Her throat ached. She swallowed hard, pushing it down. Rena's voice broke through. "He's not going to make it unless we move." The wounded soldier groaned, blood bubbling from his lips. His eyes locked onto hers for a second, pleading, terrified, human. The commander barked over comms. "Negative. Hold position until dust settles. Do not advance. Repeat, do not." She ripped the headset from her ear, the static sparking in the dirt. Enough. Her eyes met Rena's. The medic's face was streaked with sweat and dirt, her jaw tight, but her hands didn't stop working. "We can't stay here," Rena said. "They'll circle back. We'll all be boxed in." The young soldier swallowed hard, but the commander. Her voice cut sharp, steady. "The commander isn't here, we are." The words hung heavy, heavier than gunfire. For a moment no one breathed. Then slowly, one by one, they looked at her, not past her, at her. The silence shifted. For the first time it wasn't ignorance, it was expectation. Her stomach knotted. She hadn't wanted this. Not like this, but here it was. She drew a quick breath. "We move east, away from the ridge, keep the wounded low, staggered cover, short bursts." No one argued. Rena slung her pack, blood still dripping from her gloves. The young soldier checked his magazine, hands steadier now. Even the driver she'd saved pushed himself upright, leaning heavily but nodding as if his body still had a role to play. They moved. The desert swallowed their footsteps. Each crunch of gravel felt too loud, each breath too heavy. The sun bore down, merciless, pressing sweat from their skin and grit into their mouths. She led them through gullies, weaving paths between rocks the way her father had taught her when she was small. "The desert hides its hands," he had said once. "You only live if you learn where it rests them." Her throat tightened at the memory. She pushed it down. Focus. Behind her, the squad followed. Rena murmured softly to the wounded man on her stretcher, telling him stories about bread, about her mother's garden, about small things that fought against silence. His eyes fluttered, caught between pain and the pull of her voice. The young soldier walked just behind her, rifle raised, scanning the horizon with a determination too raw to be called confidence. Every now and then his eyes flicked to her, as if tethered by the invisible thread of her calm. They made it half a mile before the world reminded them it wasn't done. A shot cracked from behind, a warning, not close, not random, a reminder. The ghost was still watching. She froze, the squad froze with her. Their breaths hissed like punctured tires, shallow, terrified. She scanned the ridge but saw nothing. No glint, no silhouette, only stone, endless and patient. Her stomach clenched. He was letting them go, not out of mercy, out of something worse. A game. The thought scraped against her chest. This wasn't just survival, it was a hunt, and she was the only one he'd marked. They pressed on. By nightfall, they reached a shallow basin. Rocks rose like jagged teeth around them, enough cover to breathe without being targets. They collapsed into silence, bodies sinking against stone. Rena lit a tiny chemical stick, its faint glow casting her face in green. She wrapped new bandages around the wounded soldier, her eyes red with exhaustion but hands precise as ever. The young soldier sat apart, staring at his rifle like it might answer questions he was too afraid to ask. She watched them, her chest tight. This was what the commander's maps never showed: the humanity between bullets, the weight of small breaths. Her own hands trembled when she set her rifle down. She clenched them into fists, then opened them, as if to remind herself they were still hers. The young soldier finally spoke, voice low. Who was he, the one up there? Her heart jolted. She should have lied, should have brushed it away, called him just another sniper, but the question cracked something open inside her. Her eyes drifted to the horizon, where the ridge lay hidden in the night. A ghost. The young soldier frowned. What kind of ghost? She inhaled. The air was cold now, sharp in her lungs. The kind that doesn't need to kill you to end you, she said softly. The kind my father never came back from. The silence after her words was heavier than gunfire. Rena's hand stilled for a moment on the bandage. The young soldier's eyes widened, his breath catching. No one spoke, not right away. Finally, Rena's voice, quiet but steady. That's why you knew. Her throat ached. She nodded once. The young soldier leaned forward, desperate to fill the silence with something. Then we take him, we finish it. Her eyes met his. He meant it. He believed it, raw and simple. But she knew better. It's not that easy, she said. You don't take a ghost. You survive him until he makes a mistake. The soldier frowned, his jaw tightening. And what if he does? Her chest burned. Then you live long enough to prove he didn't end you. The words surprised her. They felt heavier, older, like they weren't entirely hers. Maybe they were her father's, carried forward without her knowing. The desert was silent again, but it wasn't empty. They sat in that silence, each lost in their own ghosts. When her eyes finally closed, sleep didn't come. Only memories. Her father's boots by the door, his voice telling her about the desert's memory, her mother's silence after the knock, and the promise she had whispered in the dark. One day, I'll finish what you started. But now, under the stars, she wasn't sure anymore if finishing meant killing the ghost or outliving him. The desert at night was never truly dark. Stars littered the sky like broken glass, sharp against the black. A pale moon spread silver across the rocks, too soft for war, too cruel for peace. Every shadow stretched long, every whisper of wind carried weight. She lay against stone, rifle close, eyes half shut but never closed. Sleep had abandoned them all. The young soldier sat near the edge of the basin, his back stiff, weapon across his knees. His face was pale, jaw clenched. He wanted to look brave. He only looked young. Rena finished her work and sat down at last, her hands raw from blood and grit. She leaned against the stone, exhaling slow. If he makes it till dawn, maybe he'll pull through, she murmured, nodding toward the wounded soldier. But her eyes betrayed her doubt. The silence that followed was heavier than words. She looked at them, really looked. Not as assets, not as burdens, as people, and it pierced her in ways bullets never had. Her father had said once, war isn't about killing. It's about carrying the weight of those you refuse to let fall. But he hadn't carried it home. Her throat tightened. She shifted, pulling her pack closer. For hours she had ignored the gnawing at the back of her mind. The desert had a way of pushing memories into corners, but now in the stillness she opened the side pouch. Inside, a notebook. Old, faded leather, the edges worn soft by years of hands, his hands. She had carried it for months but never opened it here, not where eyes could see. Tonight, though, it felt different. Her fingers lingered on the cover. She hesitated, pulse quickening. What if it was nothing but maps? What if it was everything? The young soldier noticed. His eyes narrowed. What's that? Her grip tightened. She could have dismissed it, but something in the night refused her silence. My father, she said softly. The words made the boy lean closer, curious. Even Rena's head lifted. She opened it slowly, the leather creaking. Pages crackled under her fingers, filled with sketches, scrawled notes, coordinates. Some written in haste, some in long, deliberate strokes. And there a line circled twice, jagged and deep. He doesn't miss, but he hesitates. Her chest constricted. The boy frowned. What does that mean? She stared at the ink until it blurred. It means he knew, long before the bullet found him. Rena leaned closer, her voice cautious. Knew what? Her throat burned. That the ghost wasn't just anyone. He was trained to leave a mark, to leave one alive, to make someone carry it forward. Her voice cracked on the last word. The boy's eyes widened. He left you. She shook her head, bitter and tired. He left silence. My father carried it until it broke him. And now, she trailed off, staring into the desert. Now it was hers. Rena's hand brushed her arm, grounding steady. That's why you fight different. She swallowed hard, blinking away the sting in her eyes. She hated being seen. But Rena's gaze wasn't judgment. It was human. The boy's voice was softer now, uncertain. So this isn't just a mission for you. She closed the notebook, pressing it to her chest. No mission ever is. Silence again, but not empty, full, thick with things unspoken. The desert hummed with insects, far-off winds, and then a crack. Not a gunshot, a stone shifting. Every muscle tensed, rifles raised in the dark, hearts pounding like drums against ribs. The shadows at the basin's edge shifted. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The boy mirrored her, too fast, too tense. Then a figure stumbled into view. Not enemy, not ghost. A villager, thin, older, wrapped in worn fabric that fluttered in the desert breeze. His hands were raised, empty, his eyes hollow. The boy nearly fired. She hissed, "Hold." The man collapsed to his knees, coughing, words spilling in broken English. "Water, help, please." Rena moved first, grabbing her canteen. The boy hissed it could be a trap. But Rena ignored him, crouching beside the man, lifting his head gently. He drank greedily, spilling half down his beard. His eyes closed, relief etched deep in his face. Her hand tightened on her rifle. Something was wrong. "Why here?" she asked sharply. The man coughed again, shivering despite the heat. They send me, said you have medicine." Rena's brow furrowed. "Who sent you?" His eyes flicked up toward the ridge, toward the shadows. Her stomach turned cold. "A message." The boy swore under his breath. "He's toying with us." Her pulse thundered. The ghost was watching, not just watching, steering, testing. She stepped closer, crouched so her face was level with the man. "Tell him," her voice caught, then steadied, sharp as a blade. "Tell him I'm not my father." The man's eyes widened, but he nodded weakly. He finished the water, then struggled to his feet, stumbling back into the shadows. The basin fell silent again. The boy's voice broke the quiet, shaking. "Why didn't we keep him? Get answers." She shook her head slowly. "He wasn't sent for us to question. He was sent for us to fear." The boy slammed his fist into the dirt. "Then we turn it on him. We make him the one afraid." His voice cracked with desperation. He was unraveling. She placed a hand on his shoulder, firm. "Fear doesn't break ghosts, it feeds them. Only patience starves them." Her words calmed him only slightly. His breath still came ragged. Rena spoke then, her voice low, steady. "Patience doesn't save the bleeding." Her eyes flicked toward the soldier on the stretcher. His chest still rose, faint and fragile. The weight pressed on them all, choices without answers, paths without maps. Her eyes drifted back to the notebook, her father's words, his warnings, his silence. She realized with a shiver that maybe the ghost wasn't her enemy. Not entirely. Maybe he was her mirror, a reflection of what she could become if she let silence consume her. The night dragged on, stars shifted, the cold deepened, each breath came slower, heavier. At some point, her head tipped against the stone. Her eyes closed for just a second. And in that second she saw him, her father, standing at the edge of the ridge, silent, still, watching her. When she jolted awake, the ridge was empty. Only shadows remained. But the feeling didn't fade. The notebook pressed heavy against her chest. The words inside it burned like a wound. He doesn't miss, but he hesitates. She knew then, this wasn't just about surviving him. It was about finding his hesitation and making it hers. Dawn did not rise gently. It bled into the sky like a wound, streaks of red slashing against the gray horizon. The desert revealed itself in cruel detail again. Jagged stone, cracked earth, the basin they had tried to hide in now stripped bare under the morning light. She blinked grit from her eyes. Her body ached as if stone had seeped into her bones. Sleep had been a lie. She had closed her eyes, yes, but behind them had been her father, the ghost, the sound of a rifle that never missed. The others stirred slowly. Rena checked the wounded soldier, pressing 2 fingers to his throat. A faint pulse. Still here, but for how long? The young soldier's face was hollow. Shadows under his eyes, lips cracked from thirst. He clutched his rifle as if it alone kept him upright. They had made it through the night, but survival felt fragile, borrowed. Then came the sound. Not a shot, worse. A whistle, long, sharp, descending. Mortars. The ground convulsed as the first one struck outside the basin, throwing dust and rock into the air. The wounded soldier groaned, Rena shielding him with her own body. "Move," she shouted, grabbing her rifle. The squad scattered. Another mortar hit closer, spraying shrapnel across stone. A scream tore the air, not hers, not Rena's, the young soldier's voice. He had fallen, clutching his arm, blood seeping fast between his fingers. Her chest locked. She dove for him, dragging him behind a jagged outcrop as another shell slammed into the earth where he'd been. Heat singed her back, the air splitting with violence. His face twisted in pain. "I can't." "Yes, you can," she snapped, ripping fabric from her sleeve, binding his arm tight. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. Rena crawled toward them, dirt streaking her face, eyes wide with fear and fury. "We can't stay pinned here." The boy gasped, teeth gritted. "They'll bury us alive." Another mortar fell, close enough to rattle their bones. She scanned the horizon. No artillery teams, no visible launchers, too precise, too personal. The ghost again. Not just hunting, herding. Her stomach clenched. He was forcing them east, away from command, deeper into the desert, drawing them like prey into a snare. She pressed her forehead briefly to the rock, breath harsh. Every choice he offered was poison. Stay, and they'd be buried. Move, and they'd be led. But inaction was death. "We move," she said, voice hard, cutting through the chaos. The boy stared at her through pain, sweat dripping down his brow, toward him. Her jaw clenched, through him. She didn't know if she believed it, but they had no other path. They gathered what little strength they had left. Rena slung her medic bag again, face pale but determined. The boy staggered upright with her help, his wounded arm bound tight. The driver limped, leaning heavily but still holding his weapon. The wounded soldier on the stretcher groaned with each jolt. They climbed from the basin, mortar smoke choking their lungs. The desert stretched before them, endless, merciless, yet somehow alive with unseen eyes. The march was agony, every step dragged, every breath burned. The boy stumbled, his face white with blood loss. She caught him under his good arm, half carrying him forward. He whispered, voice thin, why us, why me?" Her chest ached. She wanted to say something strong, something that would steady him, but all she could give was truth. "Because you're here," she said softly, "and that's enough." He looked at her, eyes glassy, and for the first time he didn't look like a soldier at all. He looked like a boy who had been promised life would mean more. They pressed on. The sun climbed higher, blistering. Heat shimmered across the rocks, distorting the horizon. Sweat burned into their eyes, their wounds, their resolve. Then silence broke. Not mortar fire, not rifles. A voice, Over the radio. Her headset crackled alive, though she hadn't touched it since tearing it free the day before. Static bled into words, deep and chilling. "You carry his book." Her heart froze. The ghost's voice, smooth, patient, a language she knew but laced with an accent sharpened by years in the desert. The squad stiffened, eyes wide. The boy's breath hitched. Rena swore under her breath. The voice came again, measured. "He carried it once before he died." Her hands clenched the rifle so tight her knuckles ached. She forced her voice low, steady. "You don't know what he carried." A pause, then. "He carried silence, and he gave it to you." Her chest constricted. The boy whispered, terrified, "How does he know?" She didn't answer, couldn't. The radio hissed again. "Open the book, page 43. Her pulse thundered. Her hand moved to the notebook almost against her will, pulling it from her pack. The leather was hot in the sun. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through pages filled with her father's hand. Page 43. A sketch. Her breath caught. Not a map, not words. A drawing of her. Younger, a girl sitting on the porch steps, knees tucked to her chest. He had sketched her quietly without her knowing. The lines were rough, but her eyes were sharp, alive. Her throat burned. The ghost's voice cut through the static again. "He thought you ordinary until he saw you sit that way, like stone, like the desert itself. That is why I spared you." Her knees nearly buckled. The boy swore, fear cracking his voice. "He's in your head." She shut the notebook, shoving it back into her pack, her jaw locked. "No, he's in his own." But her voice wavered just slightly. The ghost chuckled softly, chilling through the static. "You'll finish what he could not, or you'll join him. Either way, the desert remembers." The line went dead. The squad stood frozen in the heat, silence pressing against them like a weight. Rena finally spoke, voice hard but shaking. "He's tearing us apart." The boy looked at her, desperate. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me you're not carrying this for him." Her chest heaved. She wanted to deny it, to erase the weight pressing down on her shoulders, but the notebook burned against her spine like fire. She met his eyes, her voice low. "I don't know anymore." The words fractured something inside them all. But there was no time to mend it. A shot rang out. Dust burst at their feet. The ghost had returned. They dove for cover, hearts slamming, breaths ragged. Bullets chipped stone, each one placed with deliberate precision, not to kill but to remind. The boy pressed against her side, shaking. "We can't do this. We'll never make it." She grabbed his face with one hand, forcing his eyes to hers. Her voice cut like steel. "We already have, every step, every breath. That's what he can't take." He stared at her, chest heaving, then nodded weakly. Rena's voice rose, fierce through exhaustion. "Then we move now before he pins us again." She nodded, eyes sharp. "On me." They broke cover, sprinting in bursts across the rocks. The ghost shots followed, sharp, echoing, grazing stone inches from their bodies. Not missing, choosing. Each step felt like defiance, each breath a stolen victory. And with every shot she whispered silently to herself, "You hesitate, and I will find it." The desert gave no mercy. By noon the heat was unbearable, shimmering like liquid across the stones. Every breath scalded their lungs, every step ground sand into wounds that hadn't stopped bleeding since dawn. The squad was unraveling, thread by fragile thread. The boy leaned heavily on her shoulder, his bound arm useless at his side. Rena walked just ahead, eyes sunken, lips cracked. She carried her medic bag as if it weighed more than her own body. The driver limped at the rear, rifle dragging slightly in the dust. The wounded man on the stretcher was barely there anymore, shallow breaths, eyes fluttering, clinging to life with threads thinner than spider silk. And above it all, the ghost. Every ridge, every shadow carried him. He didn't fire often now, just enough. A single shot cracking the air every 20 minutes, not close, not random, always just near enough to remind them they were inside his circle. Hunted. The boy's voice cracked. Why doesn't he finish it? She didn't answer, couldn't. Because she knew. The ghost wasn't here to finish. He was here to frame. They stumbled into a ravine by mid-afternoon, its stone walls jagged and red, carved by winds long dead. Shade gave them brief relief. Rena collapsed to her knees, yanking a canteen from her pack. The water inside sloshed low, too low. She took one sip, then pressed it to the boy's lips. He drank greedily, then choked, coughing as his body fought for more than it could hold. Her throat ached with thirst, but she shook her head when Rena offered it. Later. The boy stared at her, lips wet, eyes glassy. "You're not like him," he whispered. Her chest tightened. "Who?" "My father," he said, voice trembling. "He told me never to trust anyone, said people are weak, said survival's the only thing that matters, but you," his eyes locked on hers, "you drag people out of fire." Her stomach clenched. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she wasn't strength, that she was only carrying silence like her father had, but his gaze clung to her, fragile hope straining against despair. She couldn't take it away. Instead, she said softly, "Sometimes survival isn't enough." Rena glanced up at her then, sweat dripping down her cheek, something unspoken flickering in her eyes. Agreement, or maybe prayer. The moment fractured with a sound. A metallic click. Above. She spun, rifle raised. On the ridge, a glint, the ghost, for the first time in full view. A silhouette against the sun, tall, steady, rifle angled down. The boy froze. Rena cursed under her breath. Her pulse thundered. There he was, flesh, not shadow. She raised her scope, but when the glass found him, he wasn't aiming, he was watching. Her finger hovered on the trigger. And then she saw it, his hesitation. Just as her father had written. His rifle twitched, not at her, not at the boy, but at the wounded soldier on the stretcher. The weaker one. The one who couldn't fight back. Her chest seized. The boy gasped, "He's going to." "No," she snapped, steadying her aim. The ghost's finger flexed on the trigger. Her breath stilled. And then at the last second he shifted, fired into the rock beside the stretcher. Stone burst, dust clouding the air, but the soldier lived. The ghost lowered his rifle slowly, almost deliberately. Her stomach turned. It wasn't mercy, it was message. He hesitated, not out of weakness but design. He wanted her to see it, to know he could end them but chose not to make her carry the silence again. Her teeth clenched so hard her jaw ached. "Not this time." She steadied her rifle, tracking his head through the glass. Her pulse pounded, sweat dripping into her eye, burning. One breath. Two. Her finger curled. But then the boy's body slumped against her, unconscious from blood loss. Her hand faltered. By the time she blinked, the ridge was empty. The ghost had vanished. She lowered her rifle slowly, rage and shame twisting inside her. Rena's voice cut through the silence, raw. "We can't keep this up. They'll all die before you face him." Her throat burned. "I will face him." "When?" Rena demanded. Her eyes blazed, wet with fury. "When there's no one left but you." The words pierced her, because they weren't wrong. The driver collapsed then, his limp worsening, his weapon clattering from weak hands. Rena rushed to steady him, cursing under her breath. Every thread was breaking. She looked at them, all of them. The boy unconscious, the wounded soldier fatting, Rena holding the driver upright by sheer force of will. This wasn't a squad anymore. It was a shadow of one, a handful of fragile lives bound together by pain and dust. And she was the only thing standing between them and silence. Her father's notebook burned in her pack, its weight unbearable. He doesn't miss, but he hesitates. She rose slowly, gripping her rifle. The ridge above was empty, but her eyes didn't waver. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. He's not leading us anymore. I am. Rena's gaze met hers, exhausted but sharp. Then lead us out of this hell. She nodded once, but in her chest a truth sharpened like steel. There would be no out until she faced him, not as her father's daughter, not as prey, as herself. They moved again, limping through the ravine, every step agony. The desert stretched wide and merciless ahead, but something inside her shifted. The fear was still there, cold, sharp, but beneath it something else. Resolve. She would not carry silence anymore. She would answer it. The desert night came without warning. One moment the horizon burned with molten red, and the next the sun was gone, swallowed by a wall of shadow. Cold rushed in fast, biting against skin still scorched by the day's fire. The squad huddled inside a half-collapsed ruin, broken stone walls, an old outpost long forgotten. Rena worked quietly over the boy, stitching a wound that no child should ever have carried. The driver leaned against the wall, head tilted, whispering something under his breath that only he could hear. The wounded soldier lay barely breathing, each inhale shallow, each exhale weaker than the last. And she stood outside, alone. The desert hummed with silence, broken only by the faint scrape of wind dragging dust across stone. But underneath, she felt it. He was near. Her hands flexed on her rifle, fingers stiff from the cold. The stars burned sharp above, so many, so endless, and yet all she felt was the smallness of the space between predator and prey. Her father's words echoed, cruel in their precision. He doesn't miss, but he hesitates. She remembered his silence in the hospital room, the way he'd looked at her when she begged him to speak, the way he'd refused. Her throat tightened. She wasn't going to inherit that silence, not anymore. Behind her the boy stirred. His voice was hoarse. Are you leaving us? She didn't turn. No. You're going after him. Her jaw clenched. Yes. The boy's breath caught. Will you come back? She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Instead she whispered, close your eyes, trust Rena. Then she stepped away, into the desert. The ghost waited. She knew it before she saw him. The ruins behind her shrank with every step, until they were just another dark blot in the endless sand. Her boots crunched softly over stone, breath steady, every nerve alive with dread. Then the silhouette. Standing atop a dune, rifle low, moonlight carving his figure into something almost unreal. She stopped, raised her rifle. For a long moment nothing moved. The wind held its breath. Then his voice, rough, deep, carried across the sand. You walk like him. Her heart jolted. Her father. The ghost stepped forward into the thin silver light. His face was weathered, lined, eyes sharp but heavy, older than she expected, tired in a way that looked carved into bone. Her chest ached. She aimed steadier. You knew him. The ghost tilted his head. He taught me once, before he went quiet. The words struck harder than any bullet. Her father's silence, the years of it, the way he had disappeared long before his body ever left. She swallowed hard, fighting to keep her rifle level. Why are you doing this? The ghost's gaze didn't waver. Because silence spreads, it infects. He stopped speaking, so I learned to, with bullets instead of words. Her stomach turned. That's not speaking. He almost smiled, bitter. It's the only language they understand. Her voice cracked, louder now. It's not the only language I understand. The wind pressed between them, carrying the weight of her words. He studied her, rifle still at his side as though measuring. Then slowly, deliberately, he raised it. The air tightened. Her scope caught his eye, one dark point in the glass. He didn't flinch, didn't tremble. Her finger curled on the trigger. A shot cracked. Stone shattered at her feet. He had missed on purpose. Her pulse thundered. He was giving her the choice. She thought of the boy's eyes, Rena's exhaustion, the driver's whispered prayers, the wounded soldier's fragile breath. She thought of her father, staring at her across years of silence, too proud, too broken to speak the words she needed. She thought of what it meant to inherit that silence. And she understood. Slowly she lowered her rifle. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the night. I won't carry your silence or his. The ghost's jaw tightened, his rifle wavered, for the first time his hand shook. And in that fragile hesitation, that breath of human weakness, she fired. The shot split the night. The ghost fell to one knee, clutching his side, not dead, not finished, but broken. He looked up at her, eyes wide with something almost like relief. Then he laughed, hoarse, bitter, empty. His rifle slipped from his grasp, clattering into the sand. You're not ordinary, he rasped. He thought you were, but you, his breath hitched. You framed your own eternity. Then silence swallowed him. She stood over him, rifle trembling in her hands, heart hammering against her ribs. The desert felt impossibly still. For a long moment she said nothing, did nothing. Then she turned away. By dawn, the sky was washed pale with light. She returned to the ruin. Rena's eyes widened at the sight of her, alive, standing, unbroken. The boy stirred weakly, whispering her name like it was the last tether to hope he had left. She sank beside him, pressing a hand gently against his hair. I'm here. The driver smiled faintly through cracked lips. So it's done. She didn't answer, not directly, just glanced at the horizon where the sun burned through the haze. Some things end, she said softly, but silence doesn't have to last forever. Rena's shoulders sagged, eyes wet. She reached out, clasping her hand tight, no words needed. The boy whispered, voice barely there, you came back. Her throat burned, I promised. They sat together in the ruin, broken but breathing, alive against all odds. And for the first time, the silence wasn't empty. It was peace. The narrator's voice lowered, steady, carrying weight. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Sometimes the frame etched in eternity is not a victory, not a conquest, but the moment someone refuses to carry silence any longer. She was never ordinary. And now they would never forget. The screen held on her face still, strong eyes fixed on the horizon. Then fade to black. Silence.